Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and good morning. It's great to be with you on this Memorial Day weekend when we pause and celebrate and remember and commemorate all those who have given so much to defend this blessed nation. Since I launched my campaign for the presidency less than 3 weeks ago, I've answered about 413 questions from the press, and yes, I am counting. A couple of those questions maybe didn't count. I was asked, is a hot dog a sandwich? I don't know. What do you think? Hillary Clinton has answered, I think, 13 questions now since April 12th. One of the interesting questions I've gotten asked in all those hundreds is whether or not I have been critical of Hillary Clinton because I'm a woman. I'm not being critical of Hillary Clinton because I'm a woman or because she's a woman. I am asking basic questions of Hillary Clinton because I come from a world, the same world that you come from, where titles are just titles and talk is just talk. I come from a world where actions speak louder than words. And I think Hillary Clinton is going to have to answer some very basic questions if she wants to be president. Questions about her trustworthiness, questions about her track record, questions about her friends, questions about perceived conflicts of interest. But here's the thing that we know, ladies and gentlemen. We know that Hillary Clinton will not be held to account unless we have a nominee that holds her to account in the general election. And so I am prepared to keep asking questions of Hillary Clinton and to keep being critical of her lack of a track record and her lack of transparency. As you heard in the gracious introduction from Gary, I started my business career as a secretary. I typed and filed as a temporary Kelly girl to put myself through college, and my first full-time job was as a secretary in a 9-person real estate firm. When I was a little girl, my mother said to me one Sunday morning, "What you are is God's gift to you. What you make of yourself is your gift to God." My story is only possible in the United States of America, and I've traveled and lived and worked and done business all over the world. But it is only possible in this country for a young woman to start out typing and filing and go on to become the chief executive officer of the largest technology company in the world, to go on to chair 2 major charities, to serve and advise the CIA, 2 secretaries of defense, a secretary of state, a secretary of homeland security, and then as well to run for president. My story is only possible here in the United States of America. And it's possible here because our founders knew what my mother taught me. Our founders knew that everyone has God-given gifts, that everyone has potential. And they founded this nation on what at the time was a radical idea, that here, everyone has the right to fulfill their potential by finding and using their God-given gifts. And they said that right to fulfill your potential comes from God and should not be taken away by man or government. And so here in this country, more things have been more possible for more people, regardless of their circumstances, than anywhere else on the face of the earth. As I have traveled across this country, not just in the last 3 weeks, but in the last 10 years, I must tell you, I sense a deep disquiet. People are disquieted. They are afraid we are losing something. And among many things, they are afraid we are losing that sense of limitless possibility that has always defined this nation. We always knew that if something were worth doing, we were going to do it. If something were hard to do, even better, we would figure out how to do it. We knew that our own lives were filled with the possibilities that came from our own potential, and we trusted that our children's and our grandchildren's lives would be filled with even greater possibilities. And yet people don't believe that anymore. And that when we lose that sense of limitless possibility that has always defined this nation, we lose the core of who we are. Our government has gotten so big, so powerful, so costly, so complex, so inept, so corrupt. Literally, we have come to a place in this nation's history where the potential of the people of this nation is being crushed by the weight of the government of this nation. Our government is so big, so powerful, so costly, and so complex that the secret is now that only the big, the powerful, the wealthy, and the well-connected can deal with it. Yes, crony capitalism is alive and well, because only big business and big special interests can deal with big government. When I was the CEO of a $90 billion firm, I may not have liked what Washington did, but I could handle it. I could hire accountants and lawyers and lobbyists, and that's what big companies are doing. But the 9-person real estate firm that I started out in, they can't handle it. The family-owned auto body shop that my husband started out in as a tow truck driver in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, they can't handle it either. And so we have come to a place in this nation's history where for the first time in our history, we are now destroying more businesses than we are creating. And the businesses that we are destroying are the small, the family-owned businesses. And why does that matter? Because most Americans get their start the way I did. Most Americans get their start in small businesses or family-owned businesses. Those kinds of businesses create 2/3 of the new jobs in this country, and they employ half the people. I come from the world of technology where we celebrate people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, and we should. But you know, the heroes of this economy, the engine of growth in this economy, it's the 9-person real estate firm, the family-owned auto body shop, the nail salon, the corner restaurant, the family farm. Those are the heroes of this economy, and we are crushing them. Our tax code is now 70,000 pages long. And I must tell you, when I hear Republicans talk about tax reform, yes, I'm encouraged, but the truth is we need to talk about radical simplification of that tax code from 70,000 to a couple. And I don't want to talk about revenue-neutral tax reform. I want to talk about revenue-reducing tax reform. The government has too much revenue. We are tangling people's lives up in webs of dependence. I have led 2 major charities. I have seen people in desperate and destitute circumstances, and I must tell you, people who need help in this country, we tangle their lives up in webs of dependence, and instead of encouraging them to move forward with their lives, we discourage them and tell them to lay back in that web. You know, regulations. I talked about crony capitalism, but think for a moment. Dodd-Frank, the financial crisis. Have we seen any reform of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac? No. Have we seen any reform of the 25 federal government agencies that were supposed to be minding the store? No. But we have one big new bureaucracy, Dodd-Frank. The result of Dodd-Frank, 10 banks too big to fail became 5 banks too big to fail with lots of influence to go around, and 3,000 community banks have gone out of business since that bill passed. Obamacare, written in part by drug companies and insurance companies because they wanted to make sure they understood what the rules were. And now we see hospitals consolidating, insurance companies consolidating because they have to be bigger to deal with all this size and complexity. And meanwhile, emergency room visits are up, health insurance premiums are up. Many people are losing their coverage because doctors won't cover Medicare. This isn't helping us, it's hurting us. One of the reasons people are disquieted is they don't see enough difference. The truth is this: every government agency has gotten bigger and gotten more money every year for at least 40 years under both Republicans and Democrats alike. And to me, the greatest example of the ineptitude of our government, the fact that every large bureaucracy turns in on itself and forgets who it is there to serve and who is paying for it. On this Memorial Day, we should reflect on the stain on our nation's honor that is the Veterans Administration. scandal after scandal after scandal, and yet we have not seen real reform. We have not seen the reimagination of that agency. Or your fine senator, Dr. Tom Coburn, a great man who every single year puts forward a report of excruciating and embarrassing detail about all the fraud, waste, abuse, corruption in the federal government, and what happens? Nothing. Hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars of weight crushing the potential of this nation, and nothing happens. Why are we settling for this? I am reminded of the difference between managers and leaders. Managers are people who do the best they can within the status quo. Managers do not challenge the system, they operate within the system. Leaders challenge the system. Leaders do not accept what is broken just because it has been there for such a long time. When I was a young woman, I thought that leadership was about who had the biggest office, who had the biggest title, who had the biggest parking space, who had the most perks. And I got older and wiser and learned that there were a lot of people with big offices who were not leading. We know a few in politics. We have one in the Oval Office. Leadership is not about position or power or title. Leadership is not about accepting what is broken just because it's been that way for a long time. The highest calling of leadership is to unlock potential in others, and we now need a leader in the Oval Office who understands their mission is to unlock the potential of this nation. And you can only lead by challenging the status quo. I learned that when I was at HP. I managed HP, led HP for 6 years through the worst technology recession in 25 years, the dot-com bust after 9/11. And despite those tough times, the people of HP and I transformed a company from $44 billion to $90 billion. We took the growth rate from 2% to 9%. We tripled the rate of innovation to 11 patents a day. We went from lagging behind in every product category and every market segment to leading in every product category and every market segment. That kind of transformation takes leadership. And so at the end of that 6 years, I was fired in a boardroom brawl that played out over 2 weeks, because guess what? When you lead, you make enemies. And I think that is why so many people choose to manage within the existing system instead of stepping to the plate and leading to change the system. Nowhere is leadership more important now than in the world, because the world is a dangerous and a tragic place when America is not leading. The truth is, I know more world leaders on the stage today than anyone else running, with the possible exception of Hillary Clinton, only I didn't do photo ops. I remember sitting across a table from Vladimir Putin, just he and I. And you don't have to spend a lot of time with Vladimir Putin to understand that he is driven to acquire power. And he is doing a pretty good job. And unless and until we are willing to stand up to an adversary like that and show him strength and resolve, he will just keep going. No, Mrs. Clinton, a gimmicky red reset button isn't going to stop him. And President Obama is continuously giving this nation a false choice. What he tells us is that if you don't agree with what I'm doing or what I'm not doing, the only option is to go off to war. That is simply false. Here are 4 very specific things we can do, we should do, and we must do to push back on Vladimir Putin, and every one of them is within our control. Number 1, we should rebuild the 6th Fleet. Number 2, we should rebuild the missile defense program. Number 3, we should conduct aggressive, regular military exercises in the Baltic states. And number 4, we should arm the Ukrainians. Vladimir Putin would get the message. I know our Middle Eastern allies. I know the Saudis. I know the Emiratis. I know the Qataris. I've known King Abdullah of Jordan for a very long time. And instead of holding a Camp David summit with our Arab allies to discuss a terrible deal with Iran, what President Obama should have done, what I would do, is to hold a Camp David summit with those same allies and ask them to help us fight ISIS. They know this is their fight, and they are prepared to fight. Once again, President Obama gives us a false choice. There's nothing else we can do. There's plenty we can do, and we have been asked to do it very specifically. We should arm the Kurds. There is no central government in Baghdad anymore to go through. We should arm the Kurds. When King Abdullah of Jordan was here, the terrible week that the Jordanian pilot was burned alive, he was here asking us for bombs and materiel to support his Air Force. We have not provided it yet. We should provide King Abdullah with what he is asking for. We should stand with President Sisi of Egypt when he has the courage to walk into the heart of Cairo and speak to the imams there and tell them there is a cancer in the heart of Islam and only you can root it out. We should stand with him and we should share intelligence with him as he has asked us to do. I remember as well sitting in Bibi Netanyahu's office 5 years ago. There were only 3 people in that office, my husband Frank, myself, and Bibi Netanyahu. What he wanted to talk to me about then was the danger that Iran represents. And when I walked down the hall and spoke with the head of Mossad, who I knew because of my work as the chair of the Advisory Council for the Central Intelligence Agency, he wanted to talk with me about Iran as well. This is a terrible deal because President Obama has violated every rule of good negotiation, but here's what I would do. The very first day in the Oval Office, I would make 2 phone calls. Number 1, to Bibi Netanyahu, to reassure him that this country will stand with the state of Israel. And my number 2 phone call would be to the Supreme Leader of Iran. He might not take the phone call, but he would get the message. And the message would be this: until and unless you are willing to open every single nuclear facility in your nation to full and unfettered inspections, we, the United States of America, will make it as hard as possible for you to move money around the financial system, and we will keep that pressure on. You know, I was talking to you about all those questions I've answered. And one of the most interesting questions I've gotten was on national television one morning. The question was, do a woman's hormones prevent her from serving in the Oval Office? So ladies, this is a test. Can you think of a single instance in which a man's judgment was clouded by his hormones? Anyone, including in the Oval Office. Hillary Clinton must not be the president of these United States, but not because she is a woman. She cannot be the president of these United States because she is not trustworthy, and she does not have a track record of leadership. We need a president in the Oval Office who actually understands how the economy works so that we can get this economy going again. We need someone in the Oval Office who understands how the world works and who is in the world and how to interact with the world. We need a president in the Oval Office who understands how bureaucracies work, because our federal government has become one bloated, unaccountable, inept bureaucracy. We need someone who understands technology. We need a president who understands technology, because technology is a tool that can be used not only to reimagine government, but also to re-engage the people of this country in the process of their government. And finally, we need someone in the White House who understands leadership, that the highest calling of leadership is to unlock potential in others and to challenge the status quo, and someone who understands executive decision-making, making a tough call in a tough time with high stakes for which you are prepared to stand and be held accountable. When I think about this nation, this blessed and beautiful and exceptional nation, and what we must be in the 21st century, what we can be, because all our wounds are self-inflicted, all our problems can be solved, I think of two of the most powerful symbols of our democracy, Lady Liberty and Lady Justice. Lady Liberty, she stands tall and strong. She is clear-eyed, she is resolute, she faces outward into the world, because that is the way America must always face. And she holds her torch high because she knows she is a beacon of hope in a troubled world. And Lady Justice, she holds a sword in one hand because she is a fighter, she is a warrior for the values and the principles that have made this nation great. She holds a scale in the other hand, and with that scale, she reminds us all of us are equal in the eyes of God. All of us have God-given gifts, and therefore all of us must be equal in the eyes of law and government, powerful and powerless alike. And she wears a blindfold. And I think with that blindfold, she also reminds us that here in this country, it must always be true that it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what your circumstances are here in this country, in this 21st century. It must be true that every American's life is filled with possibilities, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you.